The War of the Roses, a dynastic struggle for the throne of England fought between the houses of Lancaster and York, was a period of intense civil war lasting from 1455 to 1487, though its roots stretched back decades earlier and its consequences reverberated for generations. At its core, the war was a battle for legitimacy. Both houses claimed the throne through descent from Edward III, but differing interpretations of inheritance laws and a weakening monarchy created an environment ripe for conflict. The reign of Henry VI, 1422-1461, 1470-1471, was marked by his perceived weakness and mental instability, creating a power vacuum exploited by ambitious nobles like Richard, Duke of York, who saw an opportunity to claim the crown. Richard of York, a capable military commander and experienced administrator, initially sought to act as a loyal advisor to Henry VI, attempting to reform the government and curb the influence of Henry's wife, Margaret of Anjou. However, Margaret of Anjou, a fiercely independent and politically astute queen, viewed Richard's ambitions as a direct threat to her son, Edward, Prince of Wales, and the Lancastrian dynasty. The escalating tensions culminated in the First Battle of St. Albans in 1455, widely considered the start of the War of the Roses, a brutal clash that saw Richard of York defeat the Lancastrian forces. Richard of York's initial victory did not secure his claim to the throne, and a period of uneasy truce followed, punctuated by skirmishes and political maneuvering. In 1460, Richard of York marched on London, demanding reforms and a position of power, but was killed at the Battle of Wakefield, a devastating defeat for the Yorkist cause. Despite Richard's death, his son, Edward, Earl of March, later Edward IV, emerged as the New Yorkist leader, inheriting his father's claim and determination. Edward III proved to be a charismatic and capable military commander, swiftly reversing the fortunes of the Yorkists and securing a decisive victory at the Battle of Towton in 1461. Edward IV, 1461, 1470, 1471, 1483, was initially marked by stability and prosperity, but his controversial marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, alienated some of his supporters. The marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, while strengthening Edward's position through English alliances, also created resentment among the powerful nobility who had hoped to secure advantageous matches for Edward. This discontentment culminated in the rebellion led by Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, who switched his allegiance to the Lancastrians and orchestrated Edward IV's deposition in 1470. The Earl of Warwick briefly restored Henry VI to the throne, but Edward IV swiftly returned from exile, defeating the Lancastrians at the battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury in 1471. The battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury effectively ended the main Lancastrian resistance, with the Earl of Warwick killed at Barnet and Henry V's son, Edward, Prince of Wales, killed at Tewkesbury. Edward IV's second reign, 1471-1483, was marked by increasing authoritarianism and suspicions of conspiracy, and his sudden death in 1483 plunged the country into another crisis. Edward's young son, Edward IV, was proclaimed king, but his reign was short-lived, as his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, seized power, declaring Edward V and his brother Richard of Shrewsbury illegitimate. Richard III, 1483 to 1485, as he became known, quickly eliminated his rivals and took the throne, but his reign was plagued by unrest and accusations of tyranny. particularly surrounding the disappearance of the princes in the Tower. The disappearance of the princes in the Tower remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in English history, fueling speculation and distrust towards Richard III for centuries. However, Richard's usurpation created a new threat. Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian claimant who had been living in exile in France, saw an opportunity to challenge Richard's rule. Henry Tudor landed in Wales in 1485 and raised an army, challenging Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, the decisive battle of the War of the Roses. The Battle of Bosworth Field was a fiercely contested battle, but Richard III was killed in action, marking the end of the Plantagenet dynasty and the Yorkist claim to the throne. Henry Tudor became King Henry VII, the first monarch of the Tudor dynasty, and consolidated his power by marrying Elizabeth of York, uniting the houses of Lancaster and York and ending the dynastic struggle. Henry's reign was marked by stability and prosperity, and he implemented policies to strengthen the monarchy and restore order after decades of civil war. The War of the Roses left a lasting impact on English society, resulting in the deaths of numerous nobles, the weakening of the feudal system, and the rise of a more centralized monarchy. The Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York became powerful symbols of the dynastic struggle, and the story of the war has been immortalized in literature and legend, most famously through Shakespeare's plays. While the Battle of Bosworth Field is often considered the end of the war, skirmishes and rebellions continued for several years, highlighting the lingering divisions and resentment that remained within English society. The Wars of the Roses also contributed to the development of new military technologies and tactics, including the increased use of gunpowder weapons and the rise of professional armies. The legacy of the Wars of the Roses continues to fascinate historians and the public alike, offering a compelling glimpse into a turbulent period of English history marked by ambition, betrayal, and brutal conflict.